The nun and the stone. There are stones that speak louder than voices, if you listen. Aki had spent nearly 2 decades within the temple walls before she first stepped beyond the southern gate. She had come to the monastery as a child, of 6 silent, thin, with a gaze that searched the corners of rooms and the spaces between breaths. The monks took her in, wrapped her in wool robes and soft speech. Her days were filled with ritual and rhythm, sweeping the wooden halls before sunrise, reciting sutras before her voice had deepened, eating rice and roots in stillness. She learned the sound of water dripping in the meditation hall's eaves, the language of wind across paper doors, the pulse of her own breath echoing in the cave of her chest. Years passed like falling petals. And Aki remained. She had few words, but many thoughts, few attachments, but many questions. And yet, she never voiced them. Her master, an aged monk, known only as Teacher Ishin, had told her once, "Words are fishhooks. Silence is the sea." So she chose silence, though her mind often stirred like water before a storm. One winter dawn, as the sky shifted from indigo to pearl, Teacher Ishin summoned her to the garden. The frost had painted the stones silver, and pine needles crackled. Underfoot, he stood by the stone lantern, his hands folded into his sleeves. Aki bowed. Without prelude or explanation, he spoke. "Go and find the stone that speaks." Nothing more. She waited, hoping for clarity. But he only nodded toward the distant gate. That was all. Aki bowed again. She did not ask for maps or guidance. The stone that speaks. A riddle, perhaps. A metaphor, or something else entirely. She packed lightly. Her robe, a small pouch of rice, a flask of water, and prayer beads given to her by an old nun who had passed away in autumn. No one saw her leave. That was the way of the temple. Departures were not occasions, only movements of wind. The world beyond the gate was wider, louder, stranger than she had imagined. Villages dotted the valleys like lanterns left behind by the gods. Children played in muddy streets. Oxen plodded through fields heavy with winter's breath. Aki wandered. Some nights she slept beneath trees, some beneath roofs offered by kind farmers. She spoke little, listened much. Her journey was not marked by distance, but by moments. In one mountain town, a dog followed her for 3 days before disappearing without goodbye. In another, a blind woman gave her a hot stone wrapped in cloth for warmth. Aki never learned her name. After a fortnight of walking, she arrived at a river that curled through the land like ink on parchment. There, she met the fisherman. He was old not merely in body, but in stillness. His beard touched his collarbone. His net, made of hand-tied twine, lay across his knees in loose coils. He was not fishing. He was watching. "Are you waiting for fish?" she asked. He looked at her with eyes like river pebbles smoothed by time. "I am listening," he said. "To what?" He gestured downstream, to a cluster of stones where the water danced over them, chattering like children at play. "The stones speak," he said. "They always have. Most people forget how to hear them." She sat beside him. They listened together for what might have been minutes or hours. The river spoke in patterns. Gurgles, splashes, hushes, silences. The old man did not speak again until twilight. Then, slowly, he picked up a smooth stone round, flat, the color of ash, and handed it to her. "This one does not speak now. But it may, if you carry it long enough." She bowed in gratitude and placed it in her sleeve. Aki walked on. She passed through forests so dense that light seemed a memory. In one glade, she saw a deer standing motionless, its breath fogging in the cold air. She bowed her head. The deer did the same, then vanished like a shadow into moss. In a highland village, she helped repair a shrine to forgotten spirits. The elder there told her, "Some stones are placed not for weight, but for memory." He handed her a stone etched with a faded symbol. She added it to her pouch, though it did not speak either. In a rainy town of weavers, she traded her silence for shelter. An old woman let her stay in the corner of a loom room, where threads hummed like insects. Before Aki left, the woman offered a bowl of tea and asked, "Child, what is it you're truly seeking?" Aki answered, "The stone that speaks." The woman chuckled. "Then you must become the silence it needs." Time slipped from her grasp like water from open palms. Her sandals wore thin. Her rice pouch emptied. Her heart grew quiet in a new way, not from discipline, but from something closer to surrender. She found herself one evening beside another stream. This one was narrower, wilder. She crouched near the water's edge, unwrapped the stone from her sleeve, and placed it beside her. She waited. Night descended slowly. Stars blinked open. An owl called once, then no more. The stone said nothing, but Aki heard the wind moving through branches, the slow creak of frost forming on the banks, the echo of each breath she took. She realized, for the first time, that silence had texture. It had layers like folded cloth. Within it lived every word never spoken, every thought held back, every song that died on the tongue. She slept by the stream. The stone cradled beside her like a sleeping child. When spring finally returned, so did she. She climbed the temple steps. In twilight, her robes were torn, her feet calloused, her hair grown long. But her eyes held stillness. Teacher Ishin waited by the gate. He said nothing. Nor did she. She walked past him and entered the hall. There, she placed the stone on the old altar and bowed deeply. Only then did she speak. It never used words, but it spoke. The teacher smiled. He said, "Then you have heard enough." Aki never spoke of the journey again, not in full. But years later, when a child with curious eyes asked her why she always carried a stone in her sleeve, she would offer it gently and say, "It does not speak now, but maybe, someday, it will. And when it does, listen." The woodcutter in the mist. Some things must be carried, not cut down. In a valley where the mountains curled like sleeping beasts, and the sun rarely pierced the dense canopy above, lived a man named Haru. He was a woodcutter, not by trade, but by rhythm. He rose with the birds and fell asleep with the stars, his days defined by the sound of axe against bark, and the creak of trees bowing to time. Haru lived alone. His house was modest. Stone foundation, timber walls, a roof that leaked in the corner, but never quite enough to demand repair. Smoke rose from his chimney each morning, as faithfully as the mist rose from the forest floor. The mist was constant, soft, silver, patient. It drifted through the pines and larch trees like memory itself. No road reached his cabin. No visitor came uninvited. He had chosen this solitude not out of bitterness, but from something quieter, a grief that had folded itself so deeply into him that even he no longer named it. Once, many years ago, there had been others. A wife, a daughter, laughter in the morning, a garden with too many carrots. But time had taken them slowly, as if apologizing with every year. First the child, then the silence between two bowls at dinner, then the soft collapse of joy. Now there was only the forest, the mist, and the rhythm of his work. One morning in late autumn, Haru rose to find the trees whispering differently. Not in alarm, but in suggestion. He followed a trail deeper than usual, his axe slung across his back, a thermos of barley tea in his pack. The air was cold, but not unkind. As he reached a clearing, he heard it, a soft chirp, pained and fluttering. At the base of a fallen tree lay a small bird, black and white, its wing crooked at an unnatural angle. Haru knelt slowly. He had not touched another living creature in months. The bird's eyes blinked slowly. It made no attempt to flee. Something in Haru's chest moved like an ember that had long forgotten fire. He wrapped the bird gently in his scarf, folded it into his jacket, and carried it home. He did not name the bird. He fed it crushed nuts, soaked in warm water. He placed it near the window where the weak sun warmed the sill. At night, he moved its basket near the fire. He mended its wing with 2 tiny splints fashioned from a broken hairpin and strips of rice paper. Days passed. The bird did not sing, but it blinked more often, and watched him when he moved about the cabin. Haru found himself speaking out loud. Again, not to the bird, not really, but to the space between them. He spoke of the trees he had cut that week, the strange lichen growing on the north slope, the way the mist had turned blue just before sunrise. The bird listened, and something inside Haru began to shift. Not quickly, not visibly. But there was a new shape to his silence. Not a wait, but a waiting. One evening, as the fire crackled low, Haru sat beside the bird's basket, his hands wrapped around a cup of cooling tea. The mist outside was thicker than usual, curling against the windows like breath. There was a knock at the door. He froze. It was not the wind. He opened the door slowly, and there stood a traveler. A woman wrapped in layers of brown and gray. A staff in her hand, her face half covered with a scarf. "I saw your smoke," she said simply. "May I rest here for a night?" Haru hesitated. It had been years. But he stepped aside. She entered without noise, like someone who knew the value of silence. He gave her tea, a blanket, a place by the fire. They did not speak for hours. Eventually, she asked, "Do you live alone?" He nodded. She looked at this bird, now sleeping beneath cloth. "You don't anymore." He smiled, a small foreign twitch of the lips. "I'm Haru." "I'm Aki," she said. That name struck something in him, a faint bell, a memory of wind chimes on a warmer day. But he said nothing. In the morning, Aki left. She thanked him, bowed deeply, and vanished into the mist. He never asked where she was going, but after she left, the cabin felt larger. Not emptier, just open. Somehow, weeks passed. The bird healed. It began hopping from its basket, stretching its wing, testing its balance on the windowsill. Haru would leave the window open during the day. At first, the bird did not fly away. It would return by dusk, nestle near the fire, and sleep. Then one day, it didn't return. Haru waited, first with concern, then acceptance. That night, he took his tea outside and sat on the steps. The mist curled around his legs. Somewhere an owl called. He felt something inside him loosen, not fall apart, just loosen. Later that winter, Haru took down an old box from the attic. Inside were drawings his daughter had made, scribbled faces, trees with smiling trunks. One had a bird in the corner, drawn with too many feathers, and the word "safe" scrawled beneath it. He sat for a long time with the paper in his hands. Then he lit a candle, held the picture above it, and watched the flame take it gently. The smoke rose into the rafters, and the mist outside thickened in response. That spring, he built a small shrine by the stream. It was nothing more than a stack of stones, balanced with care. No words, no symbols. But he visited it daily. Not to pray, just to sit, to remember, to forget. To let the mist pass through him without resistance. And sometimes, when the air was especially still, and the clouds hung low over the trees, Haru thought he heard a chirp above him, not from any bird he could see, but from something lighter than sorrow, something close to peace. And in the 5th story, years later, Aki would recognize Haru instantly. Not because of his face, but because of the way he listened without needing words. The girl beneath the willow. Some trees do not speak in words, but they remember everything. Yuna was 7 when she discovered the willow tree. It grew near the far edge of the village, past the path where the rice fields gave way to untamed grasses and whispering reeds. Adults rarely walked that way. There was nothing to harvest, nothing to mend, and nothing to sell. But for Yuna, it was the only place the world stopped being so loud that she didn't understand why grown-ups spoke so sharply. Even the soft voices seemed wrapped in worry. Her father's face was often creased with silence. Her mother's hands always moved like they were chasing something unseen. At night, they argued in whispers, words too soft to make out, but heavy enough to keep her awake. So Yuna wandered. And one summer afternoon, when the sun melted everything into stillness, she followed a dragonfly past the fields and stumbled into the arms of the willow. It was enormous. Its trunk split low, like open arms, and its branches cascaded all around, forming a green curtain that brushed the earth. Inside, the air felt different, cool, muffled kind. She stepped through the veil of leaves and sat on a patch of moss. No one could see her there. It was perfect. She stayed for hours. The sun drifted across the sky. Birds called, then quieted. The world breathed around her without asking questions. When she returned home, no one had noticed she was gone. From that day on, the willow became her secret. She visited after chores, after tears, after dreams that ended with thumping hearts. She would sit beneath its canopy, knees drawn to chest, and whisper things she couldn't say aloud. "I'm not sure I like birthdays," she once told the tree. "They all pretend so hard to be happy." Sometimes she brought small things as gifts: a smooth pebble shaped like an egg, a red ribbon, a slice of dried persimmon. She'd leave them at the base of the trunk and say, "This is so you don't feel lonely when I'm gone." The tree never spoke, but it listened. And that was enough. One morning in early autumn, Yuna arrived to find someone already there. A man sat on the far side of the willow, back against the trunk, eyes closed. He was older than her father, with deep lines in his cheeks and a wooden staff resting across his knees. Yuna froze. She considered running. But something about his presence was quiet. Like a pond that had never known a ripple. She crept around the other side and sat silently. Minutes passed. The man opened one eye, glanced at her, and smiled faintly. "You found this place too," he said. Yuna nodded. Double quotes, "Did the tree bring you?" he asked. She tilted her head. "I followed a dragonfly." "Ah," he said. "Same thing." They sat in silence for a long time. Then the man asked her a question. "If the tree could ask you a riddle, do you think you could answer it?" Yuna blinked. "Maybe." "Here it is," he said, closing his eyes again. "What do you carry that grows heavier the longer you try to hide it?" She thought hard. "A secret?" He nodded. "That's one answer. There are others." She frowned. "Did the tree tell you the riddle?" "No," he said. "But it's been asking me for years." Then he stood, tapped his staff twice on the roots, and walked away through the leaves. Yuna never saw him again, but the riddle stayed with her. That winter was quiet and cold. Her father stopped working the fields, and her mother stopped singing. To herself, Yuna stayed indoors more. She missed the willow. She thought about the man's question. What do you carry that grows heavier the longer you hide it? Some days she thought the answer was sadness. Other days she thought it was love. And once, after a particularly long silence at the dinner table, she whispered, "Maybe it's not something. Maybe it's someone." In spring, she returned to the willow. She told it about the man. About how her mother had started sighing in her sleep. About how her father now looked out the window more than at her. She asked the tree, "Is the world always this heavy?" A bird landed on one of the branches above her, shook water from its feathers, and flew off again. She took it as an answer. One rainy day, Yuna brought a folded cloth pouch filled with pebbles. On each pebble, she had drawn a tiny symbol with charcoal, a star, a tear, a door, a leaf. She buried them in a circle at the base of the tree. "These are the things I don't know how to say yet," she told it. "But maybe someday you'll remember them for me." Then she crawled inside the split trunk and fell asleep. Years passed. She returned less often. School, chores, the pull of the world. But every time she felt a pressure behind her ribs, a trembling in her throat that couldn't become words. She thought of the willow. And the riddle. One day when she was 12, Eunice sat beneath the tree and whispered aloud. The answer is the truth. The branches didn't move. The sky didn't shift, but she felt a warmth in her chest, small, steady, like the flicker of something beginning to burn. And much later, as an adult standing by a lake far from home, she would meet a man named Haru. He would speak gently, listen with his hands, and offer her a cup of silence. She would recognize something in him. Not his face, but the way he didn't flinch when she paused before speaking. And she would realize, without knowing how, that he had once asked the willow the same riddle. The painter who forgot the colors. Some colors are not seen by the eye, but remembered by the heart. Ren had not painted in 3 years, not because his hands could no longer hold a brush, though they sometimes trembled now, especially in winter, and not because his eyes had dimmed, though the world had become duller, its outlines less certain. He had stopped because the colors had left him. Once they had come easily, bursts of ochre and streaks of vermilion, the deep patience of indigo and the soft tremble of spring green. They would rise in his mind like dawn through fog, asking only to be released onto canvas. But now, even when he sat before the blank page with brush in hand, he saw only shades of ash and dust, not even gray, just absence. So he had retreated far from the city galleries, the commissions, the students. He bought a small cabin at the edge of a mountain lake, a place with no name, where the mist moved like an old friend and the trees didn't care whether he created or disappeared. He chopped his own wood, brewed bitter tea, watched the water ripple in the mornings. Sometimes, in a fit of stubbornness, he would open his paint box, but the pigments mocked him, bright, untouched, waiting. And still, nothing. The canvas remained blank. He began to wonder whether the colors had ever truly been his, or if they had only borrowed his hands for a while and now found someone else. One evening in early spring, a fog hung low over the lake like a blanket. Left behind. Ren sat outside, wrapped in wool, a cup of tea cooling in his palm. He stared across the water, but saw nothing. Not the trees, not the sky. Just a vague blur, like an old memory. He closed his eyes and listened. There were footsteps, soft, deliberate. When he opened his eyes, a young woman was standing near the dock. She wore travel-worn robes, a satchel over one shoulder, and her expression was calm, not curious, not lost, just aware. I followed the mist, she said, almost as if apologizing for her presence. Ren said nothing. He hadn't spoken to anyone in weeks. She bowed gently. Do you have tea? He blinked. I do. Inside, she sat across from him at the low wooden table. She removed her scarf, revealing a face not yet worn by time but touched by silence. Her eyes moved slowly, as if choosing what to see. He poured the tea. It steamed between them like a question neither had asked. I'm a key, she said. He nodded. Ren. They sipped in silence. That night, she slept by the fire. Ren barely slept at all. He watched the ceiling beams and thought about the stranger who had arrived with no story. No request, no wait. Just presence. In the morning, she offered to sweep the porch. When she finished, she sat by the lake and whispered something he couldn't hear. She did not leave that day. Or the next. Ren did not ask her why. On the third morning, he found her standing in his studio. She wasn't touching anything, just looking. The empty canvas on the easel. The paints, the brushes, the dust. She turned to him. Why don't you paint anymore? He opened his mouth, closed it. Then finally, the colors are gone. She tilted her head. All of them? He nodded. Even the ones in your memory? He blinked. That thought had never occurred to him. She stepped aside. Then maybe start there. After she left, without farewell, without trace, Ren returned to the easel. The same blank canvas stared back, but this time, he closed his eyes. And instead of searching outward, He reached inward. He remembered his daughter's red scarf, dancing in the wind. The amber glow of lanterns during a harvest night. The pale blue kimono his wife wore the last time they danced. The deep green of the pine forest in summer. The yellow leaf that fell in slow spirals during the funeral. The muted violet of mourning robes. The gold of a temple bell swinging in silence. He dipped his brush and painted not what he saw, but what he remembered. Days passed, then weeks. Painted slowly, carefully. Not with fury, not with desperation, but with reverence. He painted the absence, the silence, the weight of waiting. The first painting was of the mist, not as it appeared, but as it felt. The second was of a figure sitting by a lake, a cup in hand, watching the world through half-closed eyes. He did not know who it was. Perhaps himself. Perhaps someone else. Entirely. In time, the cabin filled with canvas again, not as before. Not with bright bursts of brilliance, but with soft color. Earth tones, muted blues. Memory rendered visible. One afternoon, while cleaning his brushes, Ren found a small slip of paper wedged between two jars. It hadn't been there before. On it, written in faint ink, was a single sentence: "Colors return when you stop trying to own them." He stared at it for a long time, then burned it in the stove, not out of anger but gratitude. When summer came, Ren walked into the nearby village. For the first time in over a year, he donated 3 paintings to the community hall. No signature, just silence. He began offering tea to travelers who passed by the lake. Some stayed for a few hours, some for a night. He never asked why they came. He only listened when they spoke, and poured more tea when they didn't. And though he never saw Aki again, he painted her often. Not her face, but her presence. The echo she left in the room, the hush of her steps on the porch, the soft way she had pointed not to his brush, but to his memory. And in the final story, when Ren sits beside a lake again, Aki will be there. And he will smile, because he knew she would come, not to return what was lost, but to witness what had grown in the silence it left behind. The meeting at the lake. Some silences are not empty. They are gathering places for souls. The lake was still, not just in the way of water without wind, but in a deeper way, a kind of quiet that seemed older than time. The trees surrounding it held their breath. The air was soft, golden with late summer. Nothing stirred, except 4 sets of footsteps, arriving from different directions. Aki arrived first. She had not planned to. Her journey had no map, only listening. The old paths beneath her sandals felt familiar in a way she could not name. The forest had whispered toward the water, and so she followed. When she stepped into the clearing, she saw the lake like a mirror, its surface perfect, untouched. She placed her small pack beneath a cedar and sat cross-legged by the shore. She did not know she was waiting. Only that stillness was enough. You came next. He had brought nothing but his staff and a thin scarf tucked into his belt. His beard had gone silver, but his eyes were clearer than ever. He had not intended to walk so far from the woods, but the morning mist had called him down the mountain in a way he could not resist. He saw her sitting in silence. He froze for a breath, then approached slowly. Aki looked up and smiled. Neither spoke. He sat beside her and the lake reflected both their faces. Not long after, a girl appeared between the trees. She was older now, 12, perhaps 13, but her eyes were unmistakable. She stepped out from the shadows like someone walking into a dream. When she saw them, she hesitated. Haru tilted his head. Aki's lips curved in recognition. The girl walked to them and sat on Aki's other side, smoothing her skirt beneath her knees. "Is this the lake from your memory?" she asked softly. "I think it's from all of ours," Aki replied. The 3 sat in a hush so full it felt like a 5th presence. Birds chirped once, then went quiet. The wind tugged the edge of a Cloud dot and then footsteps. Slow, careful. The fourth arrived. Ren stood at the edge of the clearing, a small bag over one shoulder and a long wrapped bundle beneath one arm. He paused when he saw them. 3 souls he did not know, but somehow recognized. Aki nodded once. Gently. Ren approached, unwrapped the bundle, and revealed a painting unfinished. The canvas showed a lake much like this one, and 4 shadowed figures just beginning to take form. He leaned it against a log and sat without a word. No one asked why they were there. No one told their story, but the stories were present in the air, like threads already woven. Aki reached into her robe and withdrew the smooth river stone. She placed it in the center of their circle. Haru looked at it and whispered, "I gave that stone away once." Aki smiled. "It listened to everything." "I couldn't say." Yuna reached into her pocket and pulled out a tiny pebble with a star drawn on it. She placed it beside the stone. "I buried these at the roots of a willow," she said, "but this one stayed with me." Ren, moved by something he could not name, opened his pack and took out a folded square of canvas. On it was a painting of mist, delicate, gray-blue, infinite. He placed it beside the stones. The silence between them deepened. Not emptiness, not awkwardness. But presence. And then Haru spoke. "I once cared for a small bird with a broken wing. After it healed, it flew away and never returned. But the quiet it left behind became a room I didn't know I needed." Aki nodded. "I once walked the world seeking a stone that could speak. It never did, but it taught me how to hear." Yuna looked down at the pebbles. "I didn't know what I was hiding until someone gave me a riddle with no answer." Ren lifted his eyes toward the lake. "I forgot the colors of the world until someone reminded me that memory has its own palette." The 4 of them sat together as the sun dipped lower, brushing the lake with gold. And then something subtle shifted. Not in the world. In them. They realized each had touched the others. Journey without knowing. Aki had once offered tea to a grieving man. By a cabin in the mist. Har, you had once asked a riddle to a girl beneath a willow tree. Yuna had drawn the bird from Haru's tail before ever meeting him. Ren had painted the silence of a woman who once left a note without ink. All of them passing like wind through each other's lives. None of it accidental. They didn't need to stay long. As the stars appeared and the lake grew still again, they began to part. No words, no farewells. Aki rose and walked north. Haru followed the path east, back to the trees. Yuna turned toward the west, clutching her pebble. Ren remained for a while, finishing the painting, adding just one last stroke, a soft blue line in the shape of a willow shadow. Then he too was gone. The clearing grew silent again, but if someone stood there the next morning, they might see a stone, a pebble, and a folded canvas lying by the lake's edge. No names. No messages. Only the echo of 4 paths crossing like threads, and the silence that held them all. Some meetings are not beginnings. They are recognitions. And some silences are not empty. They are the space where everything finally makes sense.